Welcome, everyone. I'm Amy Seeley, president of Seeley Test Pros, helping students to succeed on all kinds of tests from 8th grade to grad school in Cleveland, Ohio.
And I'm Mike Bergen, president of Chariot Learning, helping students with tests, school, and life based out of Rochester, New York.
Between the two of us today, we have over 50 years of experience at the highest levels of the test preparation and supplemental education industries.
We both love to talk and learn about the latest issues in education, testing, and college admissions. So let's get down to tests and the rest. The fascinating topic we want to explore today is executive function in teens. But first, let's meet our special guest, Jyotsna Keithar.
Jyotsna Keithar spent over 20 years in the private sector of Fortune 500 companies before turning to her true passion, coaching children to reach their maximum potential. As a Tony Robbins certified life coach and an executive functioning coach, she understands the core psychology of teens and coaches them to discover their strengths. Her unique and effective coaching techniques have helped many teens with study skills, time management, organization, effective communication, and academics. She coaches ADHD children and guides them to thrive and succeed. She specializes in coaching teens for high school and college success. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me here. Hello, everyone. I go by Coach Joe. My students like to call me Coach Joe. And my passion is to help teens reach their maximum potential.
So that's awesome, Joe. I wanted to say that we're really happy to have you on. And before we dive into a topic that everybody's really fascinated with, executive function in teens, can you tell us a bit about kind of your history, how you got into working with teens and became an educational consultant and coach?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been 20 years in the corporate world in different fields, but it wasn't very fulfilling. I found out what my true purpose was to transform teens, like guide them to success. So during the course of that journey, I was told by a professor that, hey, you cannot work with teens without mastering executive functioning. So I really had to learn what it was. I am training under Peg Dawson. She's my mentor. She's a leading psychologist who's an expert in executive functioning. So that's where I craft my coaching from. And I work with teens one-on-one and in group. I try to understand what their strengths and weaknesses are and leverage their strength and work on their weakness for success in school and beyond, build their personality as well.
What was the Tony Robbins life coach certification process like?
Okay, that was pretty intense. I mean, I cried quite a bit. It's very emotional. Yeah, it was the Core 100 program offered by Tony Robbins and Madonna's training. It's called an RMT program where you finish 100 hours of life coaching. Yes, that was a good experience.
Yeah, and do you find that you apply what you learned to your work with students today?
Absolutely. So what I learned from Tony Robbins was the growth and the success mindset and how you really communicate your thoughts and how you leverage, like overcome your limiting beliefs. So I incorporate all those philosophies. Like a lot of children have some type of a negative self-talk or they can sabotage themselves. So there's a lot of neurolingual programming and everything that I learned from the Tony Robbins, which I'm able to apply. That combined with the executive functioning skills has been very good. I see a lot of success in my students. Here, I use the Tony Robbins methodology to build their personality. Then to work on their study skills and academics, I use the executive functioning tools and skills. And I use a lot of Tony Robbins method of communication as well. So in my books, the secret to success in school and beyond is mastering social skills, communication, and executive functioning. Once you master these three skills, your academics will automatically go up. A lot of times, like parents feel like if their children are struggling with a specific subject or something, they feel like I need to hire a tutor and my problem will be solved. But the thing is, the underlying foundational skill is the executive functioning. For instance, you may hire a math tutor who may be very good in delivering, but what if your child doesn't turn in the homework? right, is not questioning themselves, like using the metacognition skill, like, hey, did I get it right? I solved this problem. I'm going to hand in this test. Like, did I check that? So that's metacognition. Then there's working memory. Oh, can I recall? Am I able to recall the concepts that were taught? So you see, it's like interwoven, executive functioning. And to introduce that, when I speak about executive functioning skills, people think, oh, you're talking about the corporate world, the business executives, the CEO, they need executive functioning. But then there is some overlap to that. Yes, you need those skills for time management and running a corporation, but actually executive functioning are the brain functions in the prefrontal cortex of the brain. They are the skills that control everything that we do. Plan.
So, so
Yes.
So
when you
there's science, there's sort of science behind what these skills are. Can you share or break down for us, like what are specifically executive functioning skills? Is there
Sure.
a list of them?
Absolutely. So executive functioning skills are in the prefrontal cortex. They are like the conductor of the brain. Okay, there are 11 skills. It's broken down into 11 skills. So executive, like ADHD children, they lack a little bit of executive functioning skill. ADHD is also EFDD, which is executive functioning deficiency. So it's not like I will go over all the 11 skills. It's not like children lack all of them, but they're just deficient in a few of them that brings them down. So the executive functioning skills are planning, time management, organization, task initiation, goal directed persistence. This is like so important. You have to be driven, right? You can't have somebody like telling you constantly to do things. Then there is sustained attention or focus. Okay, there's flexibility. Flexibility is the ability to change. Like, for example, with coronavirus, poof, your structured learning is gone. Now you've got to be flexible enough to adapt to the new learning of it. That's flexibility. Then there's metacognition. It's like questioning yourself. Did I get this right? How did I do in the test? How can I do better? So this is the kind of constant questioning that a child has to do. That's metacognition. There's working memory, which is like basically recalling. It's not the long-term memory, it's the short-term memory. You learned multiplication yesterday, so you need to recall those concepts to apply it today. So these are the overarching main executive functioning. Then there is emotional control. There is like able to response inhibition, right? Like you need to know how to control your emotions and not blurt out, right? Like recognize other people's feelings and everything. So there was an instance where two teens were like sort of arguing in school, and one said, hey, you don't have money. The other teen said, at least my parents are not divorced. You see how inappropriate that is? So there's a lot of emotional control and response inhibition skills that are needed. So it's a combination of cognitive behavioral skills, these 11 skills that are absolutely needed. You get it? So these are the things, like, for example, like sustained attention. Homework or studying is going to get significantly harder. But how is the teen going to sit and complete the task? That is focus, right?
yeah, I mean, it makes sense because you were alluding to how people think that executive function skills belong just in the corporate environment, but really, you're talking about productivity skills, but you're talking about so much more. I always thought of some of them, but you've built out a much richer and complex suite of skills, and all of them are important in school.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like flexibility was one of the skill that nobody cared about until coronavirus, right? Why does a child have to be flexible? Goes to school, studies there. There is a structured regiment. Go to school. There is a period. The homework is done. But all of a sudden, everything changed, right? So flexibility was one of the skill that was absolutely needed, right? So in my assessment with children, I use the Peg Dawson's methodology, and she has a lot of ways of assessing all that. I work with a child to find out what is their strength and what is their weakness. And also, when you coach children executive functioning skills, it's like, yeah, work on metacognition. You can't just say that, right? Yeah. Now you're
If
like,
only.
Give me a little more metacognition.
yes. Yes. So you wrap it around with a goal in mind. Like, for example, hey, in math, you need to get your grade to a B. Now it's C or C minus. Let's get it up to a B. In order to do that, you need to question yourself. Okay, these are the 5 questions that you're going to ask today. Okay, did I get this problem right? Did I check it right? Before handing in, did I check for accuracy? After handing it in, ask yourself the question, how could I do better? So these are the kind of things that I wrap it around and work with them. And emotional control, I have different strategies that I use because that's extremely important. As a teen, they have to work in a group, like communicate with each other, respect the distance, wait for their turn, be patient, right? With their hormones raging as it is, they need to work on these skills as well. So that is where I focus the most. And I've seen success when teens are like unique. They are like sponges. I just love working with them. And that's the reason I like coaching teens over adults, is that their speed of implementation, right? So once they learn a concept that's new to them, they have an aha moment. Oh, perhaps if I can apply this, I will be able to do better. So I was working with a girl who had a lot of negative self-talk. She was a perfectionist. She's like, I can't start this homework because I can't meet my impossible standard, right? So that was her kind of which was like totally bringing her back. So we wrote a set of incantations that she would say before she started her homework. And she came back to me and said, hey, what we had there really didn't work, but I went to Pinterest and I got a better one. So you see, children adapt. They like it when you show them the way and the guidance. So it's, for me, it's like they're pieces of puzzles, like, which I like to solve. And sometimes some strategies don't work. That's okay. We come up with a different one that works best for the children.
But you find that it's easier in a lot of ways to get teens to implement what they're learning. Adults can sometimes be buried under so many layers of self-talk and habit and all of that. It's easier to uncover and implement executive function training.
Exactly.
That's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. And children, they're still raw, they're still fresh, they are a fertile ground, right? They haven't, all this limiting beliefs, the negativity has not seeped into them. So they're still fresh. Okay. And also, it doesn't mean that every child is ready for coaching. So there's a motivational interviewing that happens because ultimately it's the child who is doing the work, right? So that is another aspect that I have in my coaching is I want to see, like with a motivational interviewing, I can ask the child, what stage of implementing change are you? Right. So they'll come and tell, and they will tell you, it's the way of asking them questions is inquisitive investigation. Right. So they will come out with whatever is in their mind and they will tell you. So that is what I find very fascinating working with teens.
Do you find that many students want to change? I mean, they recognize the benefit to kind of getting these skills, but at the same time, the commitment to achieving them, the idea of, right, it's one thing to recognize I need help or a guidance. It's another to say, I'm willing to do the work, right, to kind of become this better, student. Do you find that there can be a gap between wanting to be better at these skills and yet the work involved in acquiring these skills?
Yes, absolutely. So the thing is, in the beginning, they're overwhelmed. They're like, oh my God, this coach is going to make me work. It's a lot of commitment. But then if you like sort of break it down into smaller parts, that's when the Tony Robbins philosophy comes as 1 mm shift per day. Right. That's what I tell my children. I'm not going to bog you down with everything. It's just this much. You do that, but do it properly. right? So we have marking period goals. It's not like the whole grade goals, right?
So incremental change is helpful,
Increment.
not seismic change, but incremental changes
When
is
you say 1 mm, you mean 1 millimeter change?
Yes, sorry,
Yeah, great.
1 millimeter. Yes. 1 millimeter. So in 10 days, it's a centimeter. So that's all I say. Like, this week, we're going to focus on this. You come back to me and tell me that if something doesn't work, we'll get rid of it and replace it. So one child said chunking didn't work. I teach study skills where I told them like, hey, chunk it into 30-minute intervals. This kid said, no, he didn't like it. He liked his old 1 hour thing. I'm like, perfectly fine. That's all right. I mean, does not have to be my way or the highway. If you are reaching your goals, that's okay with me. But please provide me feedback so that we can adjust it. And that's what I feel great about my coaching, is that they come back to me and tell me what works and what doesn't work.
right. And then that way, right, the idea is they're consciously involved in the process. So I think even if they opt to say, I want to do it in an hour, that's a conscious decision. So they're exercising metacognition and determining what is more effective for me, which is essentially what you're trying to get them to do, right?
Yes. And my core cornerstone of coaching, this is the first thing I tell the children. You are the CEO of your life. Your parents are the board of directors, CFO, chauffeur, and everything. Yes, your parents paid for me, but I work for you. You make an executive decision. You tell me what you want to work on. So that is one of the things that I do in the discovery is a SMART goal. I tell them, you tell me what you want to work on. So the kids feel empowered. They feel like they are in control, or they feel good. Okay, I have somebody who's an advocate for me, I can go to, who will guide me. And I tell them it's okay to make mistakes. Okay, mistakes are good. You learn from them. Please don't be afraid. I'd rather you fail in my environment and learn rather than the real world. It's okay to fail in the real world, but it's okay. So I give them that kind of assurance and trust, right? So it helps them, it empowers them. So that's where my coaching is a little different.
Yeah, you create that growth mindset environment.
Exactly.
So you alluded earlier to something that we encounter all the time, but may not always be able to identify. It's when students who are struggling in a subject don't have a content problem, they have an executive function problem. How can parents and educators differentiate between the two? When is it appropriate to bring in a content specialist, and when is it appropriate to address executive function?
Okay, so the thing is, if the grade is like in the beginning of this school year, it's all nice and fresh and everything, and after the second marking period is when it starts falling. So the parents need to see whether it's the concept that they're not understanding. Is it something that's being taught that they need additional help with? That's when a tutor can help. But if their habits are not where it has to be, if the child is not writing down what the homework needs to be done, or bringing back the materials that is needed for homework. I tell my students, your homework is not complete until you hand it in, right? And also they make mistakes in their test, like in the math test, they make silly mistakes. They don't look over their work, right? Or they have sustained issue problems. They're distracted, right? You have Discord, you have Google Chat, you have everything. That's one thing that is like so difficult during this online learning, is the distractions, right? So is that something that's playing a part, right? I have my students where 1 hour they need to study without distractions. So these are the components that the parents need to look at. If they need augmentation, they're struggling with the topic of understanding, a tutor will help. Tutor is a good idea, but then I ask my students to drive the tutor, right? Not drive their learning, right? You're not just a passive participant there. You are active. You go after the tutor and say, I want to learn this, rather than your tutor driving it. This is what I tell. My students are like, yeah, I have a tutor in math. Yeah. I'm like, what is it that you're doing in math? So that tutor might be teaching a concept that might not be relevant to your subject. So you need to tell them, hey, I learned this in school today, and I'm not very clear about it. Can you please go over it? Or these are the topics that I would like to learn, or these are the subjects that I have an assignment or a test next week. Please help me with that. So those are the kind of conversations that I teach my students to do it, right? The tutors, parents, they all have the best intentions for the students, right? But the child needs to recognize how to drive it, right? Sustained attention and motivation is another problem that I see. Just last week, one of my student girls said, oh, I start studying and after that I lose steam, I lose motivation to study, right? So that is something that needs to be worked on.
That makes sense. So we should look not just at the product, what their grades are, but look at their process. Try
Yes.
to identify how they're getting there, what their inefficiencies are. And it's so common for kids to seem like they're studying. They're locked in their room. They say, I'm studying, don't bother me, but they're really listening to music. They're on the phone, they're chatting, they're talking, they're watching. They're not learning.
Exactly. So this is one of the other things that I tell my children. The cell phone is they need to keep the cell phone in their charging stations in the beginning of the hour, like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. They get to go check their phones for 5 minutes. But I don't want them to keep their phone with them because of the dopamine. Each time there's a ding, they're restless, right? It's like a drug. Like, so those are some of the strategies that I teach them. Like after school, they can keep the cell phone with them, but this is one of the things. And also the 1 hour that they're studying, I don't want them like chatting with friends, no like any internet or anything, like pretty much paper and pen, right? And I've also seen a little bit of cheating going on during the coronavirus, because they talk to each other to do their homework on Discord or Google Chat and all that. They themselves came and told me. So that's how I do. I sort of work with them.
That's great. So, you've already shared a lot of great skills and strategies that people can implement in dealing with teens and really dealing with themselves. I'm learning a little bit about my own executive function. What's one more, Joe? If you can share one more insight for parents, educators, coaches, people that work with teens to cultivate a little more executive function wellness.
Yeah. So this is what I want to tell you. Like in the corporate world and everything, you have agile, you have this methodology, that methodology for project management. What do teams have? They've not been taught that skill. They've not been taught how to manage or run a whole project, but yet they're supposed to deliver it in that high standard, get good grades, be good in extracurriculars, be good in sports, right? So sort of help them develop that skills. And research has shown that it takes 25 years for the executive functioning skills to develop completely. Until then, the parents do some of the executive functioning, but not all. But just recognize it. If they're failing in the grade or something, just please don't say, oh, my son is not smart enough. No, it could, they are smart, but they just don't know how to navigate through this, right? And also I went to a course in Harvard Center of Developing Children. They speak about children running their lives like the air traffic control system of the brain. It's like the air traffic control system. There's so many planes landing, taking off, luggage needs to be put in different things. So they need to learn to run their life like that, like manage disruptions like coronavirus and everything, right? So my methodology is GAPE. Anything you do, think of GAPE. G, set goals, create an execution plan, AP, that's GAPE, and actually execute it. So GAPE, that's simple, right? And another thing that I teach parents and children to control their emotion is stop. S is stop. T is take 3 deep breaths. O is observe your emotion. And P, proceed with compassion and love, right? So as simple as that.
That's fantastic. And, we'll make that our powerful note to end on. Thank you so much, Joe, for joining us today. I know we could talk about executive function all day. Unfortunately, we're out of time.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you.
If listeners would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Got it. I have a website, giftedgabber.com. I also have a Facebook group, Pioneer Parents.
Awesome. We hope you enjoyed this discussion as much as we did. Be sure to join us for another fascinating topic and guest on the next Tests and the Rest.
And make sure to visit our show page at testsandtherest.com for expanded links for this and every other episode. While you're there, explore the rest of the TestBright website for expert, unbiased, and absolutely free answers to all the questions parents, counselors, and educators have about college admissions testing.